Alien bride auction went wrong. A human farmer accidentally won her and saved her sick daughter. His world, Green Hollow 7, was a quiet human colony where soil mattered more than politics and rain cycles were more exciting than galactic news. Ethan had only come to the Karth station to sell a shipment of high-yield grain cultures, the kind that could grow in thin air and bad dirt. It paid well enough to keep his farm running for another year. The station itself made him uncomfortable. Karth Station was huge, crowded, and loud. Species from dozens of worlds moved through its metal halls. Some floated. Some clicked when they walked. Some stared at him with too many eyes or none at all. Ethan kept his head down and focused on his work, finalizing contracts and transferring credits. That was when he heard the shouting. It echoed down the corridor, mixed with artificial music and excited voices. Curious, Ethan followed the sound, telling himself he would only look for a moment. He stopped at the edge of a wide chamber filled with raised platforms, glowing screens, and rows of seated spectators. An auction. At first, Ethan didn't understand what was being sold. Items appeared on the central platform: jewels, artifacts, strange machines. The crowd reacted with enthusiasm or boredom, but then the mood changed. A thin alien woman was led onto the platform. She was smaller than most beings there, her skin a pale blue-gray, her eyes large and tired. She held a small child close to her chest. The child was wrapped in worn fabric and barely moved. Ethan felt a cold twist in his stomach. Words flashed across the display in galactic trade common. Ethan could read it well enough. Domestic bond partner, verified fertile, comes with dependent. His breath caught. This wasn't just an auction. It was something far worse. The auctioneer spoke loudly, cheerfully, as if selling livestock. He explained that the woman's homeworld had collapsed after an economic war. She had debts she could not pay. This was the legal solution. The crowd laughed when the woman flinched at the noise. Ethan felt sick. He noticed how the woman's arms trembled as she held the child, how her eyes kept darting toward the exits as if she hoped someone might save her. The child let out a weak sound, barely a cry, and went still again. The auctioneer waved it off. "The dependent is ill," he said casually. "No long-term guarantees." Bidding started. Numbers rose quickly. Wealthy aliens competed, their interest clear and cruel. Ethan wanted to leave. He told himself this was not his business. He was one man, a farmer. He couldn't change the galaxy. Then his wrist console vibrated. A warning message flashed. "Account synchronization error. Temporary access granted." Ethan frowned and tried to close it. At the same moment, the auctioneer shouted a new bid amount. The screen flickered. "Accepted," the auctioneer declared. The room went quiet. All eyes turned toward Ethan. He froze. A symbol glowed on his wrist console, showing a massive credit transfer. His farming account had been linked to the auction system. Before he could speak, the auctioneer smiled wide. "Sold to the human bidder." Laughter rippled through the room. Ethan's heart pounded. "Wait," he said, his voice shaking. "There's been a mistake. I didn't, but the guards were already moving." The woman and child were guided off the platform toward him. The crowd watched with amusement. A human farmer winning an alien bride was entertainment to them. The woman looked at Ethan with pure fear. Up close, he could see how thin she was, how her skin was dull from malnutrition. The child's breathing was shallow, uneven. Her eyes were half-closed, unfocused. Something inside Ethan snapped. "I'm not here to own anyone," he said, louder this time. The guards ignored him. One held out a data pad. "Sign acknowledgement of transfer." Ethan pushed it away. "She needs medical help. Now." The guard clicked his mandibles. "Dependent health is not our responsibility." Ethan clenched his fists. He had grown up in hard conditions. He knew what sickness looked like. This child would not last long without help. He knelt slowly in front of the woman, keeping his movements calm. "I'm Ethan," he said gently. "I'm human. I won't hurt you." She didn't answer, but her grip on the child tightened. "What's her name?" he asked. After a long pause, the woman whispered, "Luria." She looked down at the child. "This is a Sha." A Sha coughed weakly, a thin sound that barely reached the air. Ethan stood and turned back to the guards. "I'm taking them with me," he said. "And I want access to a medical facility." The auctioneer laughed nervously. "Sir, that would require additional fees." Ethan looked at him with a steady gaze. "Then charge me." The auctioneer hesitated. Humans were still new in galactic markets. Their laws were strange, their reactions unpredictable. After a moment, he nodded. "Limited treatment only." They led Ethan, Luria, and a Sha to a small clinic near the edge of the station. The room was clean but cold. A medical drone scanned the child and emitted a flat tone. "Condition critical," the machine announced. "Multiple organ stress. Treatment cost exceeds assigned value." The clinic staff began to shut down the scanner. "No," Ethan said sharply, "keep it on." "It is inefficient," one of them replied. Ethan swallowed his anger. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small metal case. Inside were vials of clear liquid and packets of pale powder. "I'm a farmer," he said, "a bioengineer. These are nutrient stabilizers, designed for extreme environments." The staff hesitated, curious despite themselves. He carefully mixed a solution, adjusting doses by eye. He had done this 100 times for sick livestock back home, for plants that should have died but didn't. He administered it slowly, watching Asha's breathing. Minutes passed. Then her chest rose a little stronger. Luria gasped softly. Tears filled her eyes. The scanner beeped again. Vital signs stabilizing. The clinic staff stared. Ethan slumped back in relief, exhaustion hitting him all at once. They were allowed to stay in a small cargo bay Ethan had rented for the night. It was not comfortable, but it was warm. Ethan gave them his bed and slept against the wall. He woke to soft movement. Luria was awake, watching him carefully. Asha slept peacefully for the first time since he had met her. "You could have left us," Luria said quietly. Ethan nodded. "I know. Why didn't you?" He thought about it. About his parents, who had taught him that land was only alive if you cared for it. About storms that destroyed crops and neighbors who helped rebuild without being asked. "Because someone should help," he said simply. Luria looked down at her daughter, then back at him. "Humans are feared," she said. "They say you take what you want." Ethan gave a sad smile. "Some do, not all." In the distance, station alarms sounded as security reports were filed and accounts reviewed. Ethan knew trouble would come. He had embarrassed powerful people. He had broken an unspoken rule. But as he watched Ashab breathe, steady and real, he knew one thing clearly. Whatever happened next, he would not regret this choice. And somewhere deep in the cold metal heart of Karth Station, a quiet truth had been planted. A human farmer had refused to look away. The next day on Karth Station did not begin quietly. Ethan woke to the low hum of engines and the distant echo of station announcements. For a few seconds he forgot where he was. Then he saw the metal walls, the stacked cargo crates, and the soft glow of emergency lights. He sat up quickly and looked toward the small bed. Asha was still asleep. Her breathing was steadier than before, slow and deep. Color had returned to her skin, faint but real. Luria sat beside her, one hand resting gently on the child's chest as if afraid the moment might disappear if she let go. "You slept," Ethan said softly. Luria looked at him, surprised. "You did not," he shrugged. "I'm used to hard nights." That was only partly true. He was used to storms, failed harvests, and long days. This was different. The weight of what he had done pressed on him now that the shock was fading. He had challenged a system that did not like to be challenged. A station alert chimed outside the cargo bay. Heavy footsteps followed. Ethan stood slowly. "Stay here," he told Luria. The door slid open before she could answer. Two station security officers stood there, tall and armored. Behind them hovered a thin alien with polished skin and expensive robes, the auctioneer. "Well," the auctioneer said, forcing a smile, The human is still here. Ethan crossed his arms. I paid for the bay. I followed your rules. You caused disruption, the alien replied. Multiple bidders filed complaints. You interfered with a lawful transaction. I stopped a child from dying, Ethan said calmly. The security officers shifted, uncomfortable. The auctioneer's eyes narrowed. The dependent is not your concern, he said. You purchased a bond partner, not medical liability. I didn't purchase anyone, Ethan said. Your system made an error. The auctioneer waved a clawed hand. The system is flawless. Ethan knew that was a lie. No system was flawless. He took a breath and chose his words carefully. I'm leaving the station, he said, today. That may not be possible, the auctioneer replied smoothly. The bond must be processed, ownership confirmed. Luria stood up behind Ethan, fear clear on her face. She pulled Asha closer to her chest. Ethan felt anger rise, hot and sharp, but he kept his voice steady. She's not property. The auctioneer laughed quietly. Everything here is property, human. Even you if the price is right. The words hung in the air. Ethan looked at the security officers. Are you going to stop me from leaving? They exchanged glances. One of them clicked his helmet lights. Orders are unclear. The auctioneer hissed in irritation. Fine, leave. But understand this, your account is under review. Your ship may be delayed. Ethan nodded. Then I'll wait. The alien turned sharply and left, robes fluttering behind him. The officers followed, the door sliding shut with a final hiss. For a long moment, no one spoke. They will not let us go, Luria said quietly. Ethan rubbed his face. They might try, but stations care about profit more than people. If holding me costs them money, they'll change their minds. And if they do not, Ethan looked at Asha again, then we find another way. Hours passed slowly. Ethan contacted his ship. A small cargo hauler docked on the outer ring. Automated systems reported minor delays, nothing serious. Still, he didn't trust it. He spent the time checking Asha's condition, adjusting nutrient doses and monitoring her temperature with a handheld scanner. Luria watched closely. You treat her like soil, she said at one point, not accusing, just curious. Ethan smiled faintly. Living soil, living plants. Living people, the rules aren't that different, everything needs balance. She considered that. On my world we took until it was gone. So did we, Ethan said. We learned the hard way. Asha woke briefly in the afternoon. Her eyes opened, clearer than before. She looked at Ethan and frowned in confusion. Mama, she whispered. Luria's breath caught. I'm here, I'm here. Ethan stepped back, giving them space. He felt something tighten in his chest. The sound of that small voice was proof that what he was doing mattered. But good moments never lasted long on Karth Station. Another alert sounded, sharper this time. Ethan's wrist console lit up with a message. Docking privileges suspended. He cursed under his breath. Moments later, the door opened again. This time more security entered along with a different alien, taller, older. His eyes were sharp with intelligence rather than greed. I am Administrator Veth, the alien said. You have caused significant attention. Ethan nodded. That wasn't my goal. Intent is irrelevant, Veth replied. You are in possession of assets involved in a disputed transaction. They're not assets, Ethan said firmly. Veth studied him. You humans are difficult. You hide stubbornness behind politeness. Sometimes, Ethan said. The administrator's gaze shifted to Asha. He paused just slightly. The child lives, Veth said. Yes, Ethan replied. That is unexpected. Ethan said nothing. Veth clasped his hands behind his back. The auction house wants compensation. The bidders want apology. The station wants quiet. And I want to leave, Ethan said. Veth's eyes returned to him. You will not be allowed to leave with them. Luria's body tensed. Ethan felt his pulse quicken, but he forced himself to stay calm. On what grounds? Station law, Veth said. Bond verification incomplete. Ethan tapped his wrist console. Then complete it. Veth tilted his head. You wish to finalize ownership. No, Ethan said. I wish to void it. That is not how the system works. Ethan smiled slightly. Human contracts allow refusal under coercion, system error, and threat to life. All three apply. Veth was silent. Ethan continued carefully. Your station recognizes human trade law. You accepted my credits. That means you accepted our legal framework for this transaction. The administrator's eyes narrowed. You came prepared. I'm a farmer, Ethan said, but I read. Minutes passed in tense silence. Finally, Veth sighed. You are inconvenient. I've been told, Ethan replied. Veth made a decision. The station will permit your departure. However, you will be flagged. Do not return. That's fine, Ethan said. And the bond? Ethan looked at Luria. She decides. Veth hesitated, then nodded. Very well. Luria swallowed hard. I choose freedom. The administrator's console chimed as the bond dissolved. Somewhere in the station system, records shifted and alarms were quietly silenced. You have 1 hour, Veth said. After that, nothing protects you. Ethan didn't waste time. They moved quickly through quieter corridors, avoiding crowds. Ethan carried a Sha when her strength faded, her small body warm against his chest. Luria stayed close, watching everything with wide eyes. At the docking ring, Ethan's ship waited, battered but reliable. As the ramp closed and engines warmed, station lights flickered. A Sha slept again, safe. Ethan took his seat and guided the ship away from the dock. Karth Station grew smaller behind them. Only when the stars stretched into long lines did Ethan finally breathe. They were free. For now. But far behind them, on a cold station built on profit and silence, records were being reviewed. And powerful beings were realizing that a human farmer had slipped through their fingers, taking something far more valuable than credits with him. Hope, space felt different once Karth Station disappeared behind them. The ship moved through open lanes, stars stretching and snapping back into steady points of light as the jump ended. The engine noise settled into a calm hum. For the first time since the auction, there were no alarms, no shouting voices, no guards watching their every move. Ethan guided the ship on autopilot and leaned back in his seat. His hands were shaking now that the danger had passed. He let them shake. It meant he was still human. Luria sat nearby, holding a Sha carefully. The child slept against her chest, wrapped in a clean blanket Ethan had taken from storage. Her breathing was still weak, but it was no longer uneven. Every breath felt like a small victory. Is it over? Luria asked quietly. Ethan looked at the stars ahead. No, he said honestly, but we have time now, that matters. Luria nodded. On her world, time had always been stolen from her. Time to rest, time to choose, time to hope. Now even this small stretch of quiet felt unreal. The ship's medical scanner chimed softly. Ethan stood and checked the readings. Asha's temperature was stable, but her internal systems were still under stress. Whatever sickness she had, it was deep and long-lasting. She needs more than station medicine, Ethan said softly. She needs a living treatment. Luria looked confused. Living, he smiled gently. My farm. Green Hollow 7 was a hard world. Many humans had refused to settle there at first. The storms were rough, the soil thin, and the seasons unpredictable. But Ethan and others like him had stayed. They learned to listen to the land instead of forcing it to change too fast. They arrived 3 days later. From orbit, the planet looked rough and brown, marked by green lines where human settlements had slowly spread. As the ship descended, Luria pressed her face to the viewport. There is no city, she said. No, Ethan replied, just land. The ship touched down near Ethan's farmstead. Low buildings made of reinforced stone and metal stood against the wind. Fields stretched outward, covered in plants that glowed faintly under the sun, engineered to survive and heal damaged soil. As soon as the ramp lowered, fresh air rushed inside. It smelled of earth and rain. Luria hesitated at the door. This place, she said slowly. It feels quiet, Ethan nodded. The land listens here. They carried a Sha inside. Ethan's home was simple but clean. Solar panels hummed softly. Water recyclers clicked in steady rhythm. He placed a Sha on a padded medical table near the window where sunlight filtered through treated glass. Outside, the wind moved through the fields like a living thing. Ethan began work immediately. He prepared soil samples, adjusted nutrient blends, and activated a bioreactor built into the ground beneath the house. He explained as he worked, not because Luria asked, but because it felt right to share. These microbes, he said, pointing to a screen, they clean toxins. They live in the soil and the bloodstream at the same time. We designed them for plants at first. Then we learned they could help people too. Luria watched closely. Your world heals by growing. So do we, Ethan said. The first night was hard. Ashaz's fever returned briefly. Luria panicked, pacing the room while Ethan adjusted the treatment, feeding the soil with new compounds and letting the system respond naturally. He did not rush. He trusted the process. By morning, the fever broke. Asha opened her eyes and looked around, curious instead of afraid. She reached out and touched the warm soil in a nearby planter. "It's alive," she whispered. Luria covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Days turned into weeks. Asha grew stronger slowly, like a plant recovering after frost. She walked again, first with help, then alone. Her laughter returned, soft and uncertain at first, then louder as she explored the fields. Luria helped where she could. She learned to plant seeds, to read soil health from color and smell. Her hands, once weak from hunger, grew steady. Ethan watched them both with quiet pride. But peace never came without a cost. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan's comm unit crackled to life. A human voice spoke urgently. "Ethan, we've picked up traffic near your sector, non-human, unregistered." Ethan's jaw tightened. "How many?" "2 ships, maybe more behind them." Luria heard the tension in his voice. "They found us." "Maybe," Ethan said. "Or maybe they're just passing through." He didn't believe it. He activated long-range sensors. The ships slowed as they approached orbit. They were not traders. "They're from the auction network," Ethan said quietly. "They didn't like losing." Luria pulled Asha close. "What will they do?" Ethan looked out at his fields, at the soil he had spent years healing, at the child who now ran through it laughing. "They'll try to take," he said. "That's all they know." He activated planetary defense protocols. Green Hollow 7 was not defenseless. Human farmers had learned early that survival meant preparation. The machines that harvested crops could also form barriers. The soil itself could harden under specific signals. As the alien ships descended, warnings were broadcast across human channels. Nearby colonies responded without hesitation, not with warships, with witnesses. Transmissions opened. Human legal codes were shared. Medical data on Asha's recovery was uploaded and made public. Proof spread faster than fear. The alien ships hesitated. A message came through, cold and sharp. "Return the female and the child. You have no claim." Ethan replied calmly. "They're not property, and you have no jurisdiction here. You interfere with established markets," the voice snapped. Ethan looked at Luria, then at Asha, who stood bravely by her mother's side. "Markets don't excuse cruelty," he said. "Humans learned that lesson." Silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, the ships began to pull back. They had not expected resistance without weapons. They had not expected unity built on law and proof instead of force. As the threat faded, the sky cleared. Luria sank to the ground in relief. Asha ran into Ethan's arms, laughing. That night they sat together under the stars. "You saved us," Luria said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "You saved yourselves, I just gave you space to grow." Luria looked at the fields, at the soil glowing softly with life. "Then let us help you grow more," she said. Ethan smiled. On a quiet human world, something new had taken root. Not ownership, not fear, but trust. The morning sky over Green Hollow 7 looked calm, but Ethan did not trust calm anymore. He stood outside his home, boots pressed into familiar soil, eyes on the horizon. The fields moved gently in the wind, crops bending and rising like slow waves. To most people it looked peaceful. To Ethan it felt like the quiet before a storm. Inside the house, Lurya prepared food while Ashaz sat at the table, swinging her legs and humming softly. Her voice was stronger now. Every day it surprised Ethan how fast she was healing, how life returned to her little by little. The comm unit on Ethan's wrist vibrated. This time it was not a warning from a neighbor. It was an official channel. "Ethan Hale of Green Hollow 7, a firm voice said. "This is an interstellar compliance notice. You are ordered to submit to inspection." Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment. He had known this was coming. The auction network had not given up. They had only changed tactics. "Inspection for what?" Ethan asked calmly. "Violation of trade law," the voice replied. "Illegal possession of bonded individuals, medical interference with registered assets, obstruction of commerce." Ethan looked toward the house. Ashaz laughed at something Lurya said. That sound hardened his resolve. "You don't have authority here," Ethan said. "This is a human settlement." "Authority is universal," the voice replied. "Prepare for arrival." The channel closed. Within hours, ships appeared in orbit, not two this time, 6. They were larger, heavier, clearly meant to intimidate. Landing craft descended toward the open plains beyond Ethan's fields. Human colonies across the planet went on alert. Ethan activated the emergency network. Messages spread quickly. Farmers left their fields. Engineers stopped their work. Families gathered together not in panic but in quiet readiness. This was not the first time outside powers had tried to push humans around. Lurya stepped outside, her face pale but steady. "They are coming." "Yes," Ethan said. "But they won't come alone." The landing craft touched down, flattening grass and soil under heavy weight. Alien enforcement units marched out, armored and armed. At their center walked a familiar figure, the auctioneer. He looked irritated rather than pleased. His polished skin reflected the sunlight as if he did not belong under an open sky. "Well," he said loudly, looking around, "so this is where you ran." Ethan stood his ground. "This is my home." "You misunderstand," the auctioneer replied. "This is stolen property." Human settlers began to arrive, standing beside Ethan. Men and women in work clothes. Some carried tools. Some carried nothing but their presence. Lurya held Ashaz's hand tightly. The auctioneer's eyes flicked to the child. He sneered. "Still alive, how inconvenient." A low murmur ran through the humans. Ethan stepped forward. "Leave, now." "You have no power here," the auctioneer said. "This world is irrelevant." Ethan smiled slightly. "That's what they always say about farms until they need food." He tapped his wrist console. Instantly, screens activated around the field. Data streamed into the air: medical records, before and after scans, legal documents, trade agreements. Everything Ethan and other humans had prepared over weeks. "This child," Ethan said, his voice steady, "was dying under your system. She is alive under ours. That makes your system the problem." The auctioneer hissed. "You cannot challenge galactic commerce." "We are not challenging commerce," Ethan replied. "We are exposing abuse." One of the enforcement officers stepped forward. "This is your final warning." Before Ethan could respond, another voice cut in. "This is Administrator Veth." The same sharp-eyed alien from Karth Station appeared on a hovering screen. "I am observing," Veth continued. "And I am recording," the auctioneer stiffened. "This is unnecessary." "On the contrary," Veth said, "this has become very necessary." More signals joined the feed. Independent observers, medical councils, trade auditors, human legal representatives. The sky above Green Hollow 7 filled not with weapons but with attention. The auctioneer's confidence cracked. "You are disrupting stability," he said desperately. "No," Ethan replied. "We are correcting it." The enforcement units hesitated. Orders were no longer clear. The risk was growing. Luria stepped forward then, her voice shaking but strong. "I was sold," she said. "My child was dying, no one helped us, this human did." Her words were translated instantly across channels. "I choose to stay," she continued, "not because I am owned. Because I am free." Silence followed. Asha squeezed her hand and looked up at the gathered beings. "The dirt helped me," she said simply. "And he did." Something shifted, not in machines, not in laws, in perception. Administrator Veth spoke again. "Evidence confirms systemic violation within auction practices. Immediate suspension is advised." The auctioneer shouted in protest, but it was too late. Orders changed. The enforcement units powered down their weapons. Ships began to lift off. The auctioneer glared at Ethan with hatred. "This is not over." Ethan met his gaze. "For you, it is." When the last ship vanished into the sky, the fields were quiet again. Humans exhaled together. Luria sank to her knees, overwhelmed. Asha hugged her tightly. Ethan felt the tension drain from his body, leaving only exhaustion and relief. That night, messages arrived from across the galaxy. Worlds asked about the soil medicine, about the microbes, about the human way of healing through growth instead of control. The story spread. A farmer stood against an empire, not with weapons, but with proof, patience, and care. Under the stars of Green Hollow 7, a small child slept peacefully, and the galaxy was no longer the same. Months passed on Green Hollow 7, and the land changed in quiet ways. The fields grew thicker, stronger. New plants spread across the soil, their roots deep and healthy. The microbes Ethan had designed adapted faster than expected, learning from both human science and Luria's alien knowledge. Where the ground had once been thin and stubborn, it now held life easily. Change followed people too. Asha no longer walked carefully as if afraid her body might fail her. She ran. She laughed. She helped in the fields, her small hands digging into dirt that no longer hurt her. Her sickness did not vanish overnight, but it loosened its grip day by day, pushed back by sunlight, clean soil, and living medicine. Luria stood taller now. Hunger no longer bent her shoulders. Fear no longer ruled her eyes. She worked beside Ethan as an equal, learning human tools while teaching him alien methods of seed bonding and energy flow through living tissue. They did not speak often about the auction. They did not need to. The galaxy, however, could not stop talking. Messages arrived daily. Medical councils requested data. Trade alliances asked questions. Neutral worlds wanted copies of Ethan's soil systems. Even species that had once supported the auction markets now distanced themselves, afraid of being linked to a growing scandal. The auction network collapsed quietly, piece by piece. Not because of a war, but because too many eyes were watching. Ethan never celebrated. He woke early, worked late, and treated the land with the same care he always had. Fame made him uncomfortable. Attention felt dangerous. He trusted soil more than politics. One evening, as the sun dipped low, a visitor arrived. A small diplomatic ship landed beyond the fields. No weapons, no guards. Administrator Veth stepped out alone. Ethan met him halfway. "You came in person," Ethan said. Veth inclined his head. It seemed appropriate. They walked together through the fields. Asha followed at a distance, curious but calm. Luria watched from the house, cautious but not afraid. "The investigations are complete," Veth said. "The auction practices you exposed are now illegal across several systems. Others will follow." Ethan nodded. "Good. You changed trade law," Veth continued. "Without meaning to." Ethan stopped walking and looked at him. "I only meant to save a child." Veth studied him closely. "That may be the most dangerous kind of change." They resumed walking. "There is another matter," Veth said. "Your treatment methods, the soil-based medicine. Worlds want access." Ethan thought of the years of failure, of dead crops, of lessons learned slowly and painfully. "They can have it," he said, "but not the way they want." Veth raised a brow ridge. "Explain." "No ownership," Ethan said. No control, the land teaches, you don't force it. Anyone who wants this must learn to care first. Veth considered that. Many will refuse. Then many will stay sick, Ethan replied simply. Veth stopped. You understand you could become very powerful. Ethan looked out over his fields. I already have everything I need. Veth left before sunset. Life settled into a new rhythm. Human colonies nearby began using Ethan's methods. Alien visitors arrived not as masters but as students. They learned to plant, to wait, to listen. Ashag grew fast. Her laughter became common across the fields. Sometimes she tired more easily than other children, but she no longer feared sleep. She no longer woke gasping for breath. One afternoon she sat beside Ethan as he repaired a soil regulator. Will I get sick again? She asked quietly. Ethan paused. He did not lie to children. Maybe, he said, but you won't face it alone. She smiled and went back to drawing shapes in the dirt. Luria watched from a distance, her heart full in a way it had never been before. Later that night, she spoke to Ethan under the stars. I never thanked you properly, she said. You don't owe me anything, he replied. I know, she said. That's why it matters. She looked at the land, at her child sleeping peacefully nearby. On my world, she continued, we believed strength meant control, power meant taking. Ethan listened quietly. You taught us something else, she said. That strength can mean staying. Ethan felt warmth spread through him, deeper than pride. Weeks later, a formal message arrived from the Interstellar Council. They offered Ethan a title, a position, influence. He declined all of it. Instead, he sent seeds, simple packages, instructions written in basic language. No ownership clauses, no demands, just knowledge. The galaxy struggled with that. Some tried to copy the methods without care. Their soil failed. Their crops died. The lessons were harsh but fair. Others listened. Those worlds healed. Years passed. Green Hollow 7 became a place spoken of with quiet respect. Not a center of power, but a center of learning. Not a throne, but a field. Ashag grew into a strong young girl, her health steady, her curiosity endless. She learned human science and alien biology, blending them naturally without thinking of borders. One evening she stood beside Ethan and looked at the stars. Why did you stay? She asked. Ethan thought about the auction, the station, the moment he almost walked away. Because the land asked me to, he said. She nodded as if that made perfect sense. Far away, in places where cruelty had once been normal, stories were told, not of a warrior, not of a conqueror, but of a human farmer who refused to look away. And because of that refusal, the galaxy grew something new.